Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2531. Be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. I'm founder Mark Green, and I've handed the keys to this car over to Ginger Baker Rust, who's a lifelong enthusiast. Ginger's here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, and buckle up and get ready for a fun ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today we are in the city of Indianapolis, Indiana, with a great longtime friend and legendary motorsports figure by the name of Danny Drinan. Danny, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have it in gear? Are you ready to release the clutch?
I'm ready to rev it up.
That sounds great. Let me take a moment to tell our listeners a little bit more about you. Danny Drinan is one of the most innovative car designers and builders in the motorsports industry, with a background as a very successful USAC midget and sprint car driver. Danny has attempted to make the Indy 500 three times, but had his Indy Car career cut short due to a life-changing crash that nearly took his life. He was a mechanic for Mario Andretti, part of the Bonneville land speed team, the Speed Demon, who set a world record in 2021 of over 481 miles per hour on the Salt as the fastest piston-powered car on the planet, which I was personally there to witness, and it was an amazing feat. And Danny is the inventor of the patented Dri-Bar cockpit adjustable anti-roll system that has had over 500 victories in multiple racing series. He owns Danny Drinan Industries in Indianapolis, Indiana. So let's take a ride with Danny. All right, Danny, let's go a little deeper in the corner and share with us more about your journey in the motorsports world. How did you get started?
Oh, that's a good one. There's something that sparks it for everybody. My parents had to move to Arizona for some different situations. We moved to Arizona the first weekend we were there. They were trying to keep us kids occupied. So we went out to South Mountain Park on a drive, and I saw quarter midgets. And I was like, my God, I want one of those so bad. And my dad said, well, I'll tell you what. He goes, if you can save half the money, I'll come up with the rest of it. So I became the best paper boy in the world, and I saved my money up to get that first car.
How old were you when that happened?
That was 10.
You were 10 years old. And when did you get your first car?
It was about 11 months later. It wasn't a year later. We saved the money up. Oh man, I got more tips than I probably should have, but I was working my butt off.
Well, I know you now. All these years later, and you've always been a hustler as far as I have known you, as long as I've known you. When did you decide what your career path was going to be?
You know, it's really strange. I was sort of urged, shall we say, by my parents to pursue a professional career as a mechanical engineer, and I went to Arizona State, started there, and was in, I think, my second year when I had a different opportunity came about. And I had spent a whole year back in Illinois living with a guy named Howard Lenny. Howard used to be the king of midget racing. And early in my career as an employee, I was working for Stewart Fabricating out in Arizona that built midgets and sprint cars. And Howard was buying some cars from us. And he said, hey, whenever you want to come back and run against the real men, I'll have a place for you. So unfortunately, I had a really bad car accident, and it kept me out of my job long enough that I was a machinist at a race engine shop, and I got somebody replaced me because I was out with the head injury. So when I finally got the insurance money from my destroyed car, I talked my dad into letting me use his truck, and I went back and spent the summer with Howard Lenny in Illinois. Just worked doing side jobs, helping him out and racing the whole summer. While I was there, I made some really good impressions on people, including Stan Fox. And Stan was very good friends with a gentleman named Daryl Soppy, who was Mario Andretti's crew chief. And I got a phone call after I went home that summer from Daryl Soppy asking me if I would come to work for them on the Indy Car team. Well, I had just been offered my first sprint car ride, and I told him no. I said, I got a sprint car ride. I appreciate it, but this is my dream. I'm going to take the ride.
I'm going to go racing instead of going racing with Mario Andretti. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was shocked, but he's like, well, you just think about it. And 2 weeks later, he called me again. And he's like, hey, I want to come out and see you. I want to take you to dinner, and I want to talk to you. And I thought, wow, man, I already told the guy, no, I got a sprint car deal. Well, he flew to Arizona. He took me to dinner. And after dinner, it was really kind of eating me up. And I was really close with my parents. So I talked to my dad and I said, hey, this guy flew here and took me to dinner. He wants me to go to work for the Newman Haas team with Mario Andretti. And my dad was like, Jesus Christ, it's Mario Andretti. Go to work for him. So
Paul Newman.
I changed my direction and went to work for him.
And I don't think you've regretted that since.
No, it was a great part of my life. Daryl Soppy, the crew chief, was very influential in my life. He taught me so much and opened so many doors for me. It was definitely the good move.
Well, I know that you have had the opportunity to work with some of the greatest in motorsports across numerous series. And I also know that you have been a huge driver of and proponent of safety issues in motorsports. What do you think has been some of your greatest accomplishments in motorsports, but also in the safety of motorsports?
Wow. To pick out one specific thing, it would be really hard. Probably the one thing that's stuck in my mind more than anything was something that almost took my life. And that was at Springfield, and I had a pretty bad crash, and I had head injury, and it bothered me so much that I wanted to understand and know what happened before I could get back in the car. Okay. And my parents paid to have a bunch of seatbelts tested, and Bill Simpson, who had supported me in a huge way up to that point, found out about it. And unfortunately, he actually thought that we were trying to sue him. But wow. I wanted to know why the belts broke and how I got hurt and how I came out of the car so violently. And what it really came down to was a mistake that I made as a fabricator. And I had built my own seats, and there's an opening in the seat that the lap belt goes through. And I simply was trying to save weight, and I didn't put a liner around that opening. And my seatbelt rubbing on the raw aluminum frayed the lead thread on the seatbelt. And I learned through all this process that when you have any damage to that one lead thread, it's really easy to tear that whole belt in half. Whereas it's intact, you can stretch it and you can put loads on it that we can't tear apart. But if you damage it, it can tear it like a piece of paper. So that was probably the biggest thing that in my whole life that I've learned, and I've tried to share with people to prevent something like that happening again.
Well, that's an absolutely amazing story. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of people that Bill Simpson helped throughout the years that he had Simpson and was so innovative. And, you know, and I could see, and I think it's funny that he actually, I don't think it's funny, but I think it's interesting that he thought that you were going to sue him, but yet I'm sure that he realized that you found that you really were just trying to make an improvement. And I'm sure that he was a big proponent of that for you.
Well, in a huge way. And we've lost him. He's not with us anymore. Right. And he never wanted me to tell anybody, but he took care of me through that whole ordeal. He paid to keep my business going. He paid my rent. He gave me food money. The guy really was a stand-up guy.
I love that story. And Danny, thank you for sharing that. You know, and playing off that of just a little, you know, I know throughout your career, I know you have worked with numerous people that have been great inspirations to you. Would you share with us who would you say has been the most influential person in your life?
Wow. There's been a lot of really influential people, but I mentioned probably the most important guy was in my life that I can remember and go back to instantly was Daryl Soppy. The very first day that I went to work for him, he took me out and walked me around the shop and showed me where the tools were and where everything was at. And he gave me a task, and he went in his office and went back to work. And it's day one. I'm working for Mario Andretti. I came from living in a little trailer in Illinois, running my Midget, to being the lead fabricator for the best guy in the world. And I was a little nervous, and I went to machine something in the mill, and I broke an end mill off. Okay. Oh, gosh. And I was scared to death. Oh my God, this guy's going to think I don't know what I'm doing. And I threw it away. And the most important thing that's ever happened in my life happened about 10 minutes later when he came out of the office and he came to machine something himself. And he needed the frickin' half-inch end mill that I just destroyed. And I thought, this is it. I'm done. But he asked me if I knew where it was. And at first I said no. And it ate me up for about 5 minutes. And I went back to him and I said, Daryl, I'm sorry. I said, I broke it and I threw it away. And the thing he did that moment changed my whole life. He put his hand on my shoulder. He's all right, man, just let me know in the future. He goes, so I can get another one to replace it. He didn't yell at me. He didn't get mad at me. He just knew how things are and what would take. Now, I grew up with a father that I love, but my dad would have kicked my ass for it. and Daryl just said, look, I need to make sure that we have what we need to do. So I just need to know so I can get another one. And it's little things like that he did constantly that left that impression in my mind.
Oh, that is amazing. Well, I know you shared a little bit with us a little earlier on some of the challenges that you've overcome. Can you please share with us a difficult challenge or failure or obstacle that you faced, whether in personal life or business? And tell us how you overcame that situation and what did you learn?
It's connected to the one thing that we talked about earlier, which was the Dri-Bar anti-roll bar system. Okay. From the Indy Car industry, I was lucky enough to work with some of the best designers and engineers in the world, and one of them was Adrian Newey. He's the guy in Formula One, and I was lucky enough to work with him, and I worked with him every night. I was a mechanic for Michael Andretti at that time, and he was the engineer, and I would stay and work with him afterwards. And he gave me the desire to want to go beyond being a mechanic and start using my mind. Well, that's when I started designing the new midgets and the other stuff and decided to leave the Indy Car deal because I found out when they wanted to hire me as his assistant, I didn't have my degree. I had gone to Arizona State trying to get my mechanical engineering degree when I got the opportunity to go to work for Mario. So I stopped. But when I didn't have the degree, they said, I'm sorry, we can't give you that position. And that's when I decided to change the direction in my life. It's like, well, if all I can do is be a mechanic forever, I want to use my mind. I want to do something better. So I went and started designing parts. And one of them was the Dri-Bar and a roll bar system. To apply it to the midgets and sprint cars, especially on the dirt, it takes a very, very light anti-roll bar rate. And what they use in the Indy cars uses a flex blade. And with the flex blade, the way it functions when it's in a upright position, its strength is because of the material thickness. But when you rotate it and lay it flat, it's much weaker. But it's still way stiffer than it could ever work for the midgets and sprint cars. So I designed and patented a system that uses a sliding secondary blade. The way it changes at rate is extremely linear. The other systems were not linear. They didn't change very consistently. So this is something that applied perfectly. And I made the prototypes. I ran them for years. And then I finally decided to launch the company. And we came out of the gate like barnstorms. I went to the Pacific Coast Nationals with Damian Gardner. We won the first night. Well, the next morning, Brian Clausen's father, Tim Clausen, came down to me and he goes, all right, tell me what this monkey motion thing's about. So I told him, they said, well, if you could put one on the car, we'll buy it and we'll run it tonight. Well, they won and beat Damian the next night, and Damian ran second. So it just took off like a snowball, and we sold we've sold over 500,000 units in less than a year. All right. Wow. So I thought, I got this thing rocking. I went to the first race of the year at Eldora, and I had all but one guy running it. I thought, we're here. And I thought the smartest thing I could do is look at the next division with a larger car count. So I did my research and I looked at the UMP modifieds, and I picked a couple different teams to work with. That I didn't want guys that were front runners. I wanted guys that ran okay, and making them win would be way more noticeable than taking somebody that was winning already. So I picked those three teams. I had them kicking ass by the end of the year. Well, here's where life changed. The top guys in UMP were a little irritated that these low buck teams were beating them. So they got my Dri-Bar banned in UMP.
Wow.
The mistake I made, and I'm learning how to correct it to this point, was I had abandoned the midget and sprint car market because I was paying all my attention to the UMP modifieds. Well, when I went back to the last race of the year at Eldora, that 99% car count, only a couple guys still had the Dri-Bar on. And when I went up to talk to people about it, they would see me coming and put their head down and shy away from me like, oh God, here he comes. I don't want to tell him we took it off. And it took me a long time to get the balls to just call somebody up and ask them. You know, there was a team that won 14 races that year with it on, and they took it off. So I called them and I was like, all right, you guys, what's going on? I said, you guys won 14 races with it on. Why would you have taken it off? And they said, well, we got to be honest. We had a night where we just struggled. So we just took it off and went back to what we know. And I said, well, you won 14 races with it. So what am I missing? He goes, well, we went to our base package that we used to run, and we know what it does. We don't know what the Dri-Bar really does. We just put it on there and we went fast with it, but we don't know actually how to work with it. So my huge mistake was not educating my customer base before I sold it to them. And because it took off so big, we sold so many different people in different divisions. And it was all based on the fact that people were winning with it, not how they understood how to use it. So we're now actually, in the last couple months, I've been writing the script for some videos. We're going to put some videos together to educate the customer base on how it works, what it does, and how to use it, what its benefits are, so they know all about it before they buy it again.
Well, that's great, because that leads me right into my bucket list question of what would you still like to accomplish in this next chapter of life?
Well, the Dri-Bar thing is one of them, but the other part of it is, you look at life different as you get older, and all I could ever think about was making a faster race car, okay? And I had some people outside of motorsports show me how I could make so much more money not building race cars. So we have produced stuff for the airline industry. We've produced stuff for aerospace. We've done things for the car wash industry, so many other things. But we've been a job shop, and I want to change Drinan Racing Products to have a product line that it sells. And it's something that is like in my wish list. There's so many things that are in my mind of what I want to produce to have as a product line, but all I've ever done was take care of the problem that somebody walked in the door with. It doesn't matter what somebody's walked in the door with. I've been able to come up with a solution from a good, cute little story. There's a charter service that used to haul the Colts football team to the football games. And on two different occasions, they got to an airport that was frozen in. They couldn't get to a gate, and they had to unload the football players on a baggage ramp. All right. We're talking multi-million-dollar football guys that are, so some of them are extremely large as well. So they said, look, is there any way you could help us out with this? And I said, well, what do you mean? What can I do? He goes, could you design a set of stairways that we could put in the cargo bay to take with us in the charter flight? So if this happens again, we could get these guys off the plane. Well, I designed this set of stairs, and people in the airline industry saw them, and people started talking. Well, now we sell a lot of airline stairs to people that own the Embraer jets and things like that, and they use them for daily loading. They're so much easier to use. They're lightweight. They're extremely durable. They're economical compared to the monsters that everybody else has in place. So I love being able to solve a problem, and that was a fun one for me.
Well, you are probably one of the most dynamic and I would say intuitive engineers that I have ever met, because you always seem to be able to see things that others can't. And I've never known you not to be able to solve a problem. So that is a great story. It's
a plus, and it's a problem at the same time, because there's so many times when I'm talking to either whether it's a family member or a customer, and I can see how something should be done, and I try to explain it, and they can't see my vision. If that makes sense to you.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's pretty difficult sometimes when I'm like, don't you get it?
Right.
It should be so simple, but it is what it is.
Well, I'm going to switch up gears just a little bit here, and we're going to talk about you a little bit. And we're going to tell a little bit more about a vehicle in your life, a special vehicle in your life. Tell us about a truly special vehicle in your life. Can you share a great memory or an experience that you had with that vehicle?
It's really funny. All right. And it's something I can't let go. I still have a 1998 Chevy 1-ton dually that I was so proud that I finally had enough money to buy. And we were getting ready to go do a Silver Crown race in Orlando. And I bought brand new aluminum wheels to put on it. We were looking so hot. And my dad was driving the truck. And they were 3 hours or so from the racetrack going down the road in the middle of the night. And the one guy that helped us forever, Shaggy, he was laying in the back seat, and Bernie from Indy was in the truck, and all hell broke loose. Because of the new wheels got put on and they didn't get torqued right, it broke the studs off, and the truck dropped down and it tore the fender off the brand new truck. And Shaggy said he woke up and he looked out and the rear wheels on the truck just passed him and went down the road into the median. And he's like, he didn't want to get up and look any farther. He was afraid the truck was going to crash. But my dad called me. He's like, yeah, we had a little problem with the new truck, but I still have it. I've had it repainted. I've had it rubbed on it. And it's like something my son, I've had it since he was born. And I've talked about selling it and getting a new. He's like, Dad, we can't sell that truck. That's our baby. So the 98 Chevy 1-ton crew cab dually is our babe.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Well, we play a little game on Cars Yeah called Car Psychology, to where we get into your head a little bit. If you were a car, what would you be? And more importantly, why? Now, this isn't about what you want to be, but instead how you perceive yourself manifested as a vehicle.
I read this question and I was like kind of laughing a little bit and thought about it a lot. And I think my girlfriend thinks I may have hit it nail on the head here. I think it's a mixture of a 700 series BMW and a Hummer. Okay. So I've got class, I've got style, I've got luxury, and I can go off-road.
Oh, that is awesome. I love that. Well, with that going off-road, let's take the ultimate drive. All right. I have a blank checkbook that I'm going to write for you to go on the ultimate drive with no limitations. Have fun with this question. If I could wave a magic wand and arrange for you to go on the ultimate drive, whom would it be with? And what would it be?
And it's maybe because something that I saw yesterday and it's stuck in my brain, okay? It would be serial number 01 2025 Corvette that Rick Hendricks bought at the Barrett Jackson auction. That's a bad looking little car.
Would Rick Hendrick be the one that you'd want to go take a ride with in that?
No, that would be my girlfriend, Sherry.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Who would be driving then?
Well, of course, me.
What would you want to talk about with this special person named Sherry?
Maybe a little corner, but the rest of our life together.
Ooh. We may be getting a news bomb here with Danny Drinan. Well, we'll come back to that another time just to see if it happens. And I hope it does, my friend. You are well deserving. And she'd be getting an incredible person.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's talk about giving back. You've talked a little bit about who's helped you, along your way and in your career. What are some of the ways you've helped others or given back?
There's a couple ways, and one of them is kind of what I was talking about earlier, in that I love helping people with their race programs. Okay. Now it's a difficult situation because for the longest time, people, because they bought something with me, felt like they bought a lifetime license to my knowledge. And it bothered me a little bit. And it even ruffled some feathers with some of my customers or friends. And I just got to a better place in my life now. And I really love, if somebody respects me enough and my knowledge that they want to ask me a question or they want to reach out to me, that really, really makes me feel good. And so there's a lot of that. And there's one little specific thing that it's kind of my way to give back to the racing thing, which is I have a silly little quarter midget axle repair thing that I do. Okay. And I started out just helping some people at Mini Indy because we raced there and we knew them. And they would say, man, we had an axle bent or torn up or this or that. And it's like, I'll bring them to me. I'll fix them. Well, we do close to 700 of them a year now.
Wow.
And I don't make my shop rate at it. Okay. I make a little bit of money and I do it cheap enough that it's half the cost of buying a new axle. So it helps people out. And I feel good about doing that for the people in the industry.
That's great. I know you personally, and I know that you've gone above and beyond for so many racers out there in so many different racing series, and you're very humble about it. And so I can speak for you that I know that you are a very giving person, and I can speak personally to this because you've been one of my biggest supporters all of these years that we've known each other in the racing industry. And I just want to tell you that I really appreciate that because you've played a very important role in my life. And I appreciate that very much.
Well, you had a great position with somebody that means a lot to me with being Ryan Newman. And it opened the door.
Well, thank you. Please share a great book that you've read, an article, a documentary, or movie that you viewed, or something else that you believe others could learn from.
Okay, this is something Sherry laughed at me about because she's like, you don't have any notes written down about this. And I said, because I don't read things. If it's not I used to read the Speed Sport newspaper or whatever.
You were a Speed Channel guy. Yeah.
I need somebody to convince me to start reading again. Now, there is a reality, though, and one of them is from one of my many crashes. I have an eye that's really damaged. All right. So when I look at something to try and read it, my two eyes focus in different areas, and it's really hard for me. It ends up giving me a headache. So that's not an excuse. It's a reality, but there's nothing I can give you for an answer on that one.
That's great. That's so you.
I mean, if they still made a Penthouse magazine, I'd tell you I read that, but they don't even do that anymore. PG,
Danny. You are a man of wisdom. And I know that, again, from knowing you personally. Could you give our listeners a final parting words of wisdom and some advice about life or business? I mean, do you have a favorite quote or mantra that has meaning to you?
Well, there's one thing that's stuck in my head, and it came from Daryl Soppy. And it was, for the rest of your life, the first impression you make on somebody will be lasting. Mm-hmm. And that stuck with me huge. And the next thing that he said that is kind of like my mantra is your workmanship is a reflection of your personality. So if you want people to think wonderful things of you, make your parts look the same way.
I like that. Tell us the best way our listeners can learn more about Drinan Industries and Dri-Bar.
We have a website that's dri-bar.com, and it serves a couple different functions. One of them is that people can go there to access and purchase their Dri-Bar stuff. But we also have two of our videos that are available on there. And one of them, we were doing a thing called the Pyramid of Grip. All right. And it's something, that name is something that I came up with because there's so many things about suspensions that are confusing to people. And I wanted to help them understand how to achieve grip with their race car and how to make changes to let it handle differently. So part of it is I came up with the Pyramid of Grip, which is there's 5 specific things that I list. One of them is spring rate. One of them is shock dampening. One of them is tire pressure, which is part of the spring rate as well. One is the twist of the chassis. And the last is if you have a Dri-Bar or an anti-roll bar system. So those 5 things combined create a rate. That combined rate is what is being resisting a movement in your car. And if you adjust one of them, okay, it can make it a result. And the part that so many people don't take into consideration or really know is you can actually get too stiff and then you start to lose grip. So it's the combination of those 5 items together that create the end result. And as you go up the side of the pyramid, like when you have no tire pressure and you have no spring rate and you don't have no shock dampening, you don't have a load on the tire, so you don't have any grip. Well, as you start increasing any or all of those things, you create more resistance. And as you create resistance, you put more load on the tire and the contact patch of the tire, and you increase the grip. Well, finally, when you get to the top of that pyramid, you start to lose grip because you went too much air or too much spring or too much shock. And now you're losing grip because you've gone over the top of the pyramid. And that's the one thing I wish more people could understand or take the time to watch the video and learn.
Well, that's great. And I'm really glad to see that you are bringing this back more as an educational series and getting an opportunity to share your incredible knowledge with racers, like I said, across numerous industries and numerous series. Listeners, you can find links to everything we've talked about here today at carsyeah.com on the Danny Drinan link on the notes page. Danny, I want to thank you for being so generous with your time and sharing your experiences with our listeners. I got to tell you, I was a little nervous about this one because this is the very first one by myself. And I wanted to have you on here on this podcast, but the first one that I was doing by myself. And I can't thank you enough. I'm so appreciative of your time.
Well, I appreciate being asked, and I think you did a fantastic job. This has been really fun.
Well, I appreciate that. And folks, on that note, until we talk again, I will see you down the road.
Thank you so much for joining us here today on Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find today's guest show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up. It's an ebook filled with gorgeous photos of fuel filler fun, including quotes from our inspiring automotive enthusiasts. While you're on the website, sign up for weekly blogs and a whole lot more. Download your copy today, and Ginger will see you next time here on Cars Yeah.